Hi, my name's Tom Burton. I'm a 65-year-old recent college graduate. I got an associate's degree in cannabis science, and I'm continuing for a bachelor's degree in medicinal plant sciences. I've used cannabis regularly myself, daily, for about 48 years. Began in my teens for all of the usual reasons, peer pressure, rebelling against authority, but mostly to get high. I love to get high, still love to get high. Following a severe accident in 2001, where I broke 5 ribs in 7 different places, I had to quit smoking. It was at this point that I began exploring edibles, tinctures, cannabis extractions, and really came to the revelation that cannabis is indeed medicine. From that point, I developed a topical skin salve called Rick Simpson oil, with which I've cured 5 spots of basal cell carcinoma on myself under my doctor's supervision. Following 2 knee operations, I developed a pain salve, a topical pain salve that I've given to literally hundreds of people who say that it's effective for everything from deep nerve pain to healing bruises, scarring. I make edibles that have helped friends of mine get through chemotherapy when they couldn't sleep and they couldn't eat anything. Um, I've recently sent some RSO to a person who's combating renal cancer. I don't know if it'll work, and I've made no promises. She spoke with her doctor about it, and we'll see what happens. Other smaller, more minor problems in people's lives really seem to respond well, whether it's anxiety or insomnia. But it's these things that's really convinced me that cannabis is medicine. And so my personal vocation from this point forward is going to be a cannabis advocate. And I would like to convince you to be a cannabis advocate with me. That's the purpose of this speech, and I'm going to detail how and why. First of all, you need to prepare yourself to hear some of the most important health information that you may ever hear in your entire life about a part of your body that you may know nothing about. It is your endocannabinoid system, typically called your ECS. This was discovered in the 1990s following a separation of THC and cannabinoids in the 1960s by a Dr. Ralph Mechoulam in Israel. But in the 1990s, the endocannabinoid system was discovered and elucidated by medical science. And the endocannabinoid system controls literally every other bodily system that we have. It controls our central nervous system. It controls our digestive system. It controls your respiratory system. It controls your circulatory system. It controls our limbic and lymph systems. All of our bodily systems are controlled by our endocannabinoid system. Now, the endocannabinoid system receptors in your brain are the largest and most dense mass of any receptors in the human brain. We have endocannabinoid receptors all over our body. CB1 and CB2 receptors not only in our brains, but in our organs, in our digestive tract, literally underneath our skin, which is how I've been able to heal my own skin cancer. But the unfortunate thing about all of this is that the endocannabinoid system is only today, in 2025, taught in 9% of medical schools in the United States. So doctors literally do not know this stuff, and they literally do not treat cannabis as medicine. This is untenable, and it has been created. I'm going to give you an abbreviated history of cannabis here in the United States, which will explain to you what has happened. This has been medicine for over 5,000 years to humans, but here in the United States, less than 100 years ago, we decided that it was evil. That doesn't make it not medicine. In fact, hemp was ordered grown in the colonies in the 1600s by the King of England. But cannabis as a drug likely came to the United States with the slave trade. And beginning in the 1800s, it was used in pharmaceutical preparations used by doctors. It was listed on tinctures as cannabis for about 100 years in this country, from the mid 1800s up until the Prohibition began. This is according to Michael Bostwick, who was writing for the Mayo Clinic in 2012, documented in many, many places. That cannabis has been used for over 5,000 years, as I mentioned, as medicine for spiritual and religious purposes, as well as recreation. During Prohibition here in America, the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, a man named Harry Anslinger, he had actually declared cannabis was not harmful until Prohibition ended. And then, being concerned for the future of his agency, he started his Reefer Madness campaign, which most people my age are familiar with, and the propaganda and demonization began at that point. Now, let me take a minute to explain why I call it cannabis instead of marijuana. And this is an important distinction for all of our discussions because laws are written using the term marijuana. Most of our news reports on it using the term marijuana. And marijuana, but prior to the Reefer Madness campaign, cannabis, as I said, was listed on the tincture labels and was used as medicine. Marijuana is what Mexicans called cannabis. And when Anslinger started his war against cannabis, he co-opted their term marijuana, and you can see it spelled on some of the government propaganda at the time with either a J or an H. The reason that he had began calling it marijuana was to try and stoke fear and prejudice against the Mexican population that had really burgeoned and blossomed in the United States following the Spanish-American War. This being a pejorative and racially prejudiced term, I feel like it's important in our advocacy to make a point to always try to refer to it as cannabis. The history of the United States government during our lifetime of demonizing, propagandizing, and outlawing cannabis is well known. Despite this, users have persisted to where it's now become legal in some 26 states and pretty well accepted through society. 8 years ago, there was a Yahoo and Marist College comprehensive nationwide poll issued that showed that some 52% of American adults had tried it at that time, and 44% of the ones who had tried it were using it regularly. In fact, there were 65% of those people were parents, and at that time, 8 years ago, fully 22% of Americans were using cannabis. The general public support was even more demonstrative in that poll, showing that 81% of Americans support medical cannabis. That same year, the National Association of Science, Engineering, and Mathematics, these are the most respected authorities in our country in those fields, issued a 517, I think, page report that exhaustively detailed 10,000 different studies and writings about cannabis and its efficacy as medicine, and as well as the dangers and downsides of it. The overwhelming conclusion was that there are a number of human ailments and conditions that respond now to cannabis as medicine, and there are myriad possibilities for applications throughout the entirety of human health. And their recommendation, again, 8 years ago in 2017, was that we study this as scientists and doctors diligently to incorporate it as medicine. Despite this overwhelming evidence and scientific push, the DEA refuses to reschedule cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And cannabis still is on our controlled substances list as a Schedule 1 drug, deeming it more dangerous than fentanyl or methamphetamine, saying that it has absolutely no medical efficacy. And these things are just wrong. In 2022, I believe, I'll have to look, but 2022 or 23, the Department of Health and Human Services issued a recommendation after being asked to study it and make a recommendation to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, that they reschedule cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. This is our own government fighting with our own government. To this point, the DEA still has not done that. They've said that they will undertake a study to see whether they should do it or not. And this is such a travesty because cannabis is unique as a plant. It is unrivaled in the amount of cannabinoids that it has, that the endocannabinoid system needs, and I believe has developed in conjunction through evolution to produce our own endocannabinoids to replace the phytocannabinoids that we're supposed to be getting from cannabis. Now, the problem with that is that our own endocannabinoids, which many are similar, if not identical, to the physical makeup of the phytocannabinoids in cannabis, except that our own endocannabinoids aren't as long-lasting or as powerful as the phytocannabinoids. This leads me to believe, with the age of cannabis and what we know about it as being the oldest cultivated plant known to man, older than any grains, any fruits. In fact, it's the oldest camp follower, what they call it. Its closest second cousin is hops, which also has had myriad uses in the human experience. A man named Keith Butler of OP Innovates and Mellow Hemp said this in 2022 at a National Cannabis Industry Association Committee Insights discussion. And it perfectly encapsulates my feel about cannabis today. This is a companion plant to humanity. It interacts with our bodies like no other compound on earth. It manages all of the systems of our body, and we have almost no understanding of it in the big picture. The only way we're going to learn is to have access to it. And three truths are surfacing in this capitalistic system that is America. We cannot fix the climate because that would destroy big energy and big oil. We cannot have peace because so much of our economy is wrapped up in the military-industrial complex and the weapons that we make and sell around the world. And we cannot cure cancer because that would decimate our economy and our entire medical system. And I believe that these are the reasons that cannabis is being kept from us. That sounds outlandish, and those are some big claims, but I would like you to study yourself, look into it a little bit further, see if indeed everyone can grow a plant in their garden that is medicine, and then join me in being a cannabis advocate. Thank you very much.